Welcome to another broadcast of Truth Be Told, where we believe in experience becomes truth. I'm your host, Tony Sweet. Joining me in studio is world-renowned astrologer Rachel Lang and the one and only Captain Ron. Well, we have a great show for you to finish out 2016 by predicting 2017, and we have one of the world's most famous mentalists. We have the amazing Kreskin in the house. We're going to talk to Kreskin about what's coming up in the new year, the new administration, and what's going to happen in your future. The amazing Kreskin, for over 6 decades, I said 6, doesn't look it, but yes, it's been 6, has had his own television series, his own board game by Milt Bradley, 20 published books, and major motion picture inspired by his work. You've seen him on The Johnny Carson Show, David Letterman Show, heard him on The Howard Stern Show, Jay Leno Show. The list goes on and on and on and on. And we are so honored to have him with us today. We're going to find out about his life, how he got to where he is today, and what he thinks is going to happen in 2017. So please put your hands together for the amazing Kreskin right here on Truth Be Told. The amazing Kreskin. Yes, he's amazing. Hi, Kreskin.
Yes, Tony. I'm here, and we are on air live, right?
We are on live. We're streaming to our website. We're streaming to YouTube. We're streaming to Periscope Live and Facebook Live. So people all over the world are tuning in.
By the way, folks, if I ever get the chance, I'm in the area working there. I'll come on with you folks live, but I want to warn the listeners just to protect them, Tony. I dare not read Tony's thoughts on the air. I'm only joking, Tony.
Yeah,
that's probably a good idea.
You should. I'm glad you didn't earlier, because you might have got embarrassed.
All right, God. Are you out in L.A. now?
We're
Tony?
in Hollywood. Yeah, we're in Hollywood at Sunset Gower Studios, one of the oldest studios in Hollywood.
That's right.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm sure you've been on this lot before. I mean, you've been on pretty much everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's nice. It's just nice to hear where you're coming from, and the coverage you folks have is really great. How long, Tony? And I could almost interview you. How long have you been doing the show?
Well, I've been doing this particular show for 4 years, but I started on air with Tony Sweet. My other show, it's been almost 8.5 years. So yeah, I've been doing it a while.
Now you said Tony Sweet. That's the name of your show? The other show?
Yeah, the other show's On Air with Tony Sweet. Yeah, I am a sweet guy.
Air. And this one is called?
Truth Be Told.
Great title.
I know.
Wow.
I know. That's why we have people like yourself on, because we need the truth.
That causes people to want to investigate, read a bit. I know that seems like a foreign word, but I just found out, as traveling as much, there are still people who read, and I do read. I'm very old-fashioned, folks. I can't get it out of a cylinder or a flat glass. I just got to turn pages. I know that's archaic, but I just built a whole house with addition to my library, so because it's over 9,000 books now.
Wow.
9,000 books. Wow, that sounds amazing.
I read a pamphlet once.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, when I'm home, I'm not home at all, but when I'm home, I usually read 4 books a night. So I'm constantly sent books by authors, and to give some commentary so they can use them as blurbs and so forth. So it's refreshing to get a cross section of what's going on from time to time, and books. Well, listen, look at how many movies have been made from books,
True.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me ask you this: do you retain the books?
You mean, do I throw them out? Oh, you know what I read?
No, do you remember them? Because that's one thing that half the time I don't remember what I read.
Well, I don't. I know Howard Stern made a big issue out of this because he had some reading expert called in and said that can't be, and that can. You don't argue with Stern on the radio.
Right.
He had some words, and then he gave me a book. I read. Takes me about 12 minutes to read a novel, and about 35 minutes to read a technical book. But I'm not a skim reader. But the philosophy there is not as impossible as it seems. When we went to school, initially, we were taught to say words and read words aloud. We were never taught not to read words aloud. So most of us, when we read about the speed that it takes to say them because we're hearing the words in our head.
Right.
Right.
But if you But if you look at a word, if you look at the word Mississippi, typewritten in front of you, you don't start with the letter M and end with the letter I. You see the whole word instantly at once.
Right.
So I see a paragraph at once, and I'm able to. I'm very fortunate because reading has been my 20th book in real time. That took me 2 years to put together, but that's because I had an approach regarding the centuries to come, how I felt the world would change. But reading's been important in my life. I always say to young people in the audience, if anybody ever says they're bored, you are looking at a boring person.
Right.
Because they don't need to have two cars and have their own house. They can live in a single room apartment and pick up a book, and it can change your world.
Right.
Agreed.
Kreskin, I know. I mean, you're. I think, what is it, 84 years young?
81.
81.
Tony.
Well,
81,
that's
yeah.
the same as my daddy.
Yeah,
My
did
daddy's.
Did you folks see how Tony aged me 3 years?
Sure did.
My God.
Well, because you're so knowledgeable, I can't believe you're 81 with all that knowledge.
He has the world knowledge of an
Well,
84-year-old.
Yes.
I hear you. I travel. I travel.
And you have a birthday coming up too, don't you?
Pardon me?
You have a birthday coming up too in just a
Yeah,
couple
I
of
do,
weeks.
and on the 12th.
Yeah.
I don't know even know if I'll be home. The airline industry announced, I guess it was last year, I've now flown in my career a little over 3 million miles. So I'm on the road much of the time, and it brings me to various cultures and what have you. In fact, we didn't count last year yet, but 2 years ago, if you counted all of the radio, television, and concert appearances in 1 year, 2 years ago, I did exactly 364 appearances around the world.
Wow. Wow. Where do you get that energy? My goodness.
It's amazing.
I jog half an hour every night, and when I jog, I turn off everything. I don't wear earphones because I have to listen to my own inner self. And today we're not doing that much anymore because we're relying on electronic devices to answer our questions. We're not paying attention to each other as much because people often, I get a kick out of people who go out to eat to restaurants and waiters nudge me because they know my position on things like this. They go out and they have a cell phone sitting on the table, which is really telling their friend, I don't have that much total feeling about you because I've got to have this.
Thanks, Rachel.
Because years ago, it sounds incredible, but years ago people were able to go out and relate to each other without a cell phone there.
Right.
Because sometimes we have to listen, and people often have more to say when they're not speaking. Sometimes the quietness can be very illuminating,
Do you sleep at all? Because every night you do a show, every night you run a half an hour, every night you read 4 books.
I don't advocate this, but as my road manager will tell you, I average 4 hours of sleep a night, 4.5,
There you
sometimes
go.
5. But
Wow.
but I can. The one thing, but don't do that. The one thing you learn to do, and I think you folks understand this in this business. It's a very important skill, and that's to be able to take cat naps and to relax in a certain. For example, there's nothing less productive than sitting in an airplane because you can't play cards with someone, you can't converse very easily, you can't sit across the table. So when I'm going on flights, like in the past 2 days, and I'm not exaggerating, the past 2 days I've only had 3.5 hours sleep, but I do get naps on planes, so I don't kill myself by if I'm tired. I can fall asleep. When I'm on an airplane, I can fall asleep by the time before it takes off, and that's the way I get. And then when there's certain people I know personally, no, I'm only joking. If they're listening, I don't mean that maliciously. Something, guys and gals, if we can't in this day and age laugh at ourselves, we are in trouble. I am damn fed up with this politically. By the way, and I mention Jerry Seinfeld all the time. For him to announce that he's given up performing in colleges because who would have ever dreamt in this country that colleges would edit and censor what a comedian could kid about? Right. When I was a little kid, and it was the Second World War, I remember seeing a Jack Benny movie in which they were mocking Adolf Hitler and someone was playing Hitler. and they're somewhat consider things like that with an enemy politically incorrect. We had better learn to laugh at ourselves. That's what this freedom is about.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kreskin, I know there's when you say 6 decades of working, I mean that's just amazing. And there's a lot of generations that may not know who you are. I grew up watching you on Carson.
Absolutely, that's where I know from Carson.
And so I went.
Did you hear? Tony, did you hear are you aware? And I can't even give you the name of the station. 3 months ago, that one station bought the rights to the Carson show, and they're showing them twice a night. I can't believe it. I mean, this is like, shows that were 20, 30 years ago.
But there's nothing better.
and people are calling me and telling me they're on. Yes, Carson was I did 88 Carson shows.
88.
And the formal count they give us, my appearances, is 61, but we didn't talk about it while he was still alive. Carson was very bitter with NBC because, and you got to understand, in those days there wasn't the value put to videos of shows, so NBC erased all of the first 2 years of the Johnny Carson show, all of them.
Really?
They should tape over them, yeah.
Kidding.
That's why if you meet his son and the family in California, the shows, he got the rights to get very pristine copies, which are buried in concrete under the earth. But the shows, 88 shows with him, and the stories I could tell. And I will go into it now because we're discussing the possibility of doing a television special on this. Of the stories I could tell you behind the scenes, but there it was a time when I walked. You never saw Carson before a program that he had a very good policy that he didn't meet the guests, and he didn't talk during commercials, something which people in broadcasting today don't understand and have not learned. Because if you want to learn from the people who know the business, and I worked with Steve Allen before Carson and all these people, they were quiet between breaks because some of the best remarks come out off the cuff, and he didn't want to lose them to being said before the show, because then he'd have to say to the person, well, repeat that on the air, and it doesn't sound the same. It doesn't come across.
Hey, doesn't Howard Stern do the exact same thing?
Who?
Howard Stern. You were on there. Doesn't he do
Howard,
the same thing?
Yeah.
That's what he said. He will not talk to people because he doesn't want that.
He will not. And it isn't that he's antisocial, but you're losing the element of the other thing that's disappearing. And by the way, I'm not knocking all television today. Certainly, one of the best personalities I've worked with in recent years is Jimmy Fallon. He has a quality about him that's very similar to Tom Hanks. They are the same off camera as they on. The image they have within them, the personality they have, very genuine and very natural. And Hanks, of course, I know because he produced the motion picture The Great Buck Howard, in which John Malkovich plays me, and it was written by a former road manager. But and his son plays my road manager. In fact, opening night on Broadway, and they kept sending me the script. By the way I treat women in the movie is not the way I really treat them. Come on, please. They just had to add a little. They had to add a little bit of spark to my private life because my private life's pretty limited. And I knew gals that said, "You never said that to me." Whatever. But Hanks thanked me quietly for making it possible for his son to play me. But anyway, he said to me, "Kreskin, I want to tell you. This is after the red carpet and the press is out there, but we get off to a corner." He says, "I want to tell you the good and the bad side about making the movie." And I'm thinking, what? I didn't want to say anything to him. Good and the bad side. I said, well, what is it, Tom? He says, well, the good side is that John Malkovich watched days and days of television appearances early in your career, just the past year. On and on he's going. I said, yeah. He says, well, the bad side. He says, you know that handshake of yours? Well, it's a handshake which Regis has said many times is a dream of every chiropractor. I have a very highly energetic, it's not an affectation, it's the way I shake hands. I said, yeah. He said, listen to this. He says, Kreskin, I'm not exaggerating. John Malkovich shook hands for every day with 30 people the way you shake hands for days on end. We were needing chiropractors. He just wanted to get me right.
That's great. Yeah.
Well,
so I do create problems. That's why And by the way, you folks you folks with the gentleman that you're sitting with can see how relieved he is. He's not in person with me because he wanted to guard his arm. No, that's okay. Go ahead, Tony.
No, what I want to know, because I work with a lot of psychics and mediums, and Rachel's an astrologer, and she's also a psychic medium. Could you explain to many that may not know the difference between a mentalist, because you do a lot of predictions, and we're going to talk about those today, the difference between a mentalist and a psychic?
Well, and I also know some very dedicated psychics. Some have become very close friends, and we all, of course, know some that are fraudulent. But that doesn't mean everybody is fraudulent. That's a bad rule to set for anything on end. Some very dedicated ones. But my work, the best way I can explain it is this. Let's say, okay, at the Riviera in Las Vegas last year, I mentioned two names. I was doing thought reading with the audience, and this elderly gentleman, distinguished looking elderly gentleman, stood up, and I said, "Sir, how do you know these people?" He says, "Kreskin, we don't live here in Vegas. We're visiting. We're on vacation." And I forget where he told me he was from. They're not our friends. There are two pet dogs. We love them dearly. And I said, I love animals too. And I told him I have cats because traveling cats are easy to take care of by people at home. At my house, and I said, didn't you say to your wife, I wonder if Kreskin could tell me my Army serial number? I wish, Tony and folks, I wish we had a camera at that moment. These tables in the casino, in the auditorium, were small tables that people sat at with their drinks. He slams his fist down the table. He says, "Damn it, the hell!" He said, "Yeah, I did say that you were Kreskin, but it was 2 hours ago." And he mentioned a restaurant in another casino not near here. I said, "Do you know your Army serial number?" And Tony, if he did not know it, no matter what kind of abilities I had, I could not tell him any more than if someone were thinking in the audience, where am I going to be February 28th? And they stand up and I say, well, think about where it is, and they don't know. The person has to have the information in their conscious mind and concentrate. So I can't foresee, where they're going and also something that they're not consciously aware of. By the way, in his case, and then you can ask anybody you meet, a man or a woman in the service or has been, they never tell people. They never forget their service numbers, but they never tell them because it's never in part of conversation. I've talked to people who's been married for years. No, my husband never mentioned it. He never brings it up. But he had never told her. He knew it by heart. And I gave him every single solitary digit in his Army serial number, and he was in World War II.
Wow.
So that's the nature of what I do rather than looking into it. And because Tony, in the case of the predictions, it is, I'll tell you, the new book I wrote, some of the people in the industry, both in Hollywood and also in television here and the West Coast, kept saying, Kreskin, you got to write a book because, I'm traveling endlessly. If you were to, did I tell you about counting 2 years ago, all the radio, television, and concerts in 1 year? Did I tell you what it came to? 2 years ago, it came to 364 appearances. If I mentioned that before, maybe I said that to you. I'm not even sure now. Did I? But anyway, but the thing is this, because of all the audiences, I mean, was that the past 2 years, Spain, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, Wales, Netherlands, Canada, United States, they want me to write a book on the 5.5 years off and on that I toured Saudi Arabia, because Tony, it reads like a fairy tale. I mean, I'm not defending the attitude of that part of the world, but the American Oil Company sponsored my appearances because they did not have entertainment in that part of the world. The British people, the Americans, and what have you. But we don't know what wealth is. I'll give you an idea. We're driving to another city this one day I'm appearing at, and there on the road, on the desert off the road is a banged up Rolls Royce. And I said, "Gee, what happened?" They say, one of the American U.S. guys said, he says, "Chris, you understand, if they get in a car accident here in Saudi Arabia, they just get a ride back in the city and buy another car and leave the broken car there."
Wow. Wow, that's not
But
where I grew up.
the thing is, my life has been really in tuning in on how people think. When I got back from, I had a television series years ago called The Amazing World of Kreskin, and I was talking about it today because I was on a lot of broadcasts in Canada, which is like a second home. They started my series, and it became the second highest rated show in the country, and then it went to the United States and then went worldwide for 5.5 years. So we taped some of the shows in England. So I come back from England, and Carson says to me, Kreskin, you read thoughts? I say, yeah. He said, yeah, but did we just hear you did a television special in Japan? I said, yes, because of my series. They wanted to do 1 hour special. He says, well, of course, you had all your guests, celebrities, people who could speak Japanese and English because you don't speak. I said, no, I don't understand Japanese. Is that what you did? I said, well, Johnny, let me share you an inside story. They said the same thing to me, Mr. Kreskin. Do you want all celebrities that speak English? And at first I was going to say yes. I said, no, wait a minute. Get me some famous actors and actresses who don't speak English. Now, Carson's sitting there because everybody's wondering, how in the world am I going to work? So they brought on this gentleman, and I didn't know his name because I don't know Japanese movies, but he was very famous. And we had an interpreter. And I said to the interpreter, I'm giving him this big chart, this pad. Tell him to turn the back of it towards us of the camera so we can't see it. And tell him to draw a picture of anything, but it's got to be a clear picture of something. So he explains in Japanese, we hear this and hear this. I had my back to him, but it didn't matter if I did or not because the camera showed you couldn't see what he was drawing. And, of course, a picture is worth 1,000 words in any language. It's still a picture of something. He's finished. I take a chart, and I'm going to reveal what he's thinking of, and I can't put it together. I'm trying to draw something, but it doesn't make sense. Oh, I'm drawing a line, I'm drawing a triangle, I draw a circle. I keep drawing triangles and circles because I can't get anything with it. Finally, I'm getting very frustrated, and I draw the circle. No, I draw the triangle with the flat part on top of it and put the circle on top of it. I say, I just don't know. I can't figure out anything more. Could he show us and tell us and have him tell you and you translate in English what he drew? He drew an ice cream cone.
Oh, wow.
So I literally drew what he drew, but I didn't know what it meant. So you see, even in another language, it's possible sometimes to transmit thoughts.
Now, what about? I know that you've made some predictions, and you've probably seen things over the course of your career that maybe you didn't necessarily want to see or that were difficult to see.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you do in those circumstances?
Yeah, I'll tell you one I just talked about the past 2 days, which I haven't mentioned for a number of years because I don't. It was something I didn't feel that I wanted to promote. But every year I'm on, like your show, I'm in various shows because it's the new year and people want to have my perspective on what's happened in the past and how I feel about things and what have you. And I'm on CNN, and it is January 1st, 2001. And what am I saying? And I'm talking, and we're talking and talking. And suddenly I stop. And we're in New York City, by the way. I said, I don't know why in God's name I'm saying this. And I don't talk like this, but I just had an image of a crash involving 2 airplanes here in New York City in September. Well, needless to say, after 9/11, I spent 2 days with the FBI, the CIA, and they're asking me, Kreskin, what made you say it? Why did you come? And as you asked me, I really don't know. I have no idea why I said that. There's no rhyme or reason. Now, let me tell you another experience that just the past couple of weeks, and I got to be honest, and I'm being interviewed as far away as Germany because some writers that have followed my career want to do in-depth study of theories of how this could have happened. You know, I predicted the last 4 presidential elections in 2012. And of course, we had an election then, but I went on the Jimmy Fallon show, And I never announce when it comes to the presidential elections. I never announce ahead of time publicly who I believe is going to win, because you get in trouble with the public. Some are going to say, "Well, you're promoting that person," or "You're going to make it come about," and I don't need that kind of crap. So anyway, so I sealed it in a miniature strong box and gave it to Fal, and he turned it over to NBC, put it in a safe where it stayed until the election, because when I delivered my prediction, it was 1.5 years before Election Day. So they had it 1.5 years ahead of time. Well, this year I decided, no, I'm not getting involved. I was turned off. First of all, there were so many pictures. There's pictures of me with Trump on the internet, because I've been in his home. I performed for all kinds of audiences everywhere, and I have pictures of me with Hillary Clinton, because I perform a lot in Washington D.C. So I said people are going to misinterpret the pictures and what have you. Then it's 2 days before Christmas. Before the election day, and I'm saying, oh, wait a minute. All the polls are saying it's that close. They're all giving Hillary Clinton a little bit ahead, but all close. I'm going to go with this and just see how I can comment on it when it's all over. So I wrote my prediction out. It was put in a window by a newsman, David Webb. Put in a window called Madame Paulette's in New York, a multi-million-dollar company that has clothes of Churchill, of royalty and wealthy people, and this man said, I'm going to sponsor it being protected and guarded there. So it was they got a big safe for this tiny strong box. So 2 nights later, after Election Day, I'm delivered the after Election Day to David Webb's studio. This is going on Sirius, but it's going also throughout. I guess it's going overseas, because they planted a mass coverage of this. And I said, well, where's the safe? He said, Kreskin, the security people are bringing it. It's going to be here. It would be here just before we go on the air. He said, what do you think? Did you hear about what happened with Trump? Not with Trump. Did you hear what happened with Fox? I said, what the hell is going on? Everybody's saying, well, you know about Fox. You heard about it. He said, didn't anyone tell you? It turns out, and listen to this is crazy, Tony, just a few hours before, Fox was alerted by a Fox station in Washington, D.C., that I had been on Fox television in Washington in the year December 9th, 2015. That's 11 months before the election. I was probably performing in that city, and one morning the news people had me on to interview me. And I didn't remember that, and so forth. Well, you can look on my webpage and watch the interview, because in the middle of the interview, they said to me, I can read the quotes here. When asked who would win the presidential election 11 months from now, Kreskin answered, quote, I do know, but I don't want to get in trouble, he said. I've been in his house, the one that's shouting all over, and in the end it was clear I was saying Donald Trump. And it was 11 months earlier.
Wow.
What's crazy about that is, and I swear to God I am telling the truth, and people who know me well enough, because I never announce things ahead of time. Tony, I have no memory of ever saying that. I see the video because it shows me doing it. I have no memory of ever saying, because I would think I would stop myself. I must have been in an introspective frame of mind, because it came out unconsciously. In the interviews I'm getting with people who know me saying, we know you too well. You must have blurted this out without thinking. It's a wild story, but it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, hold on a second. You say that you're not psychic at all, and that's not what it is. It's different. It's mentalism. But when you tell these stories and seeing these images sounds to me exactly like a psychic prediction, like a paranormal sort of a feeling,
well,
right?
It is. Yes, I believe in paranormal phenomena, certain forms of ESP. It's just mentalist, of course, is an entertainment term. Years ago, before you folks were born, and don't start the rumor, Tony, because he's about to tell the audience I was born in the 1880s. But no,
oh, you weren't?
Years ago.
I'm kidding.
Oh boy, when I meet this young man, and I look forward to meeting you guys. Folks, I'm saying this. I get good vibes from you folks. They're good folks. They're flaky, but they're good people. You want to get
We
to
do
know
live
them.
in L.A., so.
Yeah.
But you know what? Years ago, before the turn of the last century, maybe the 1920s and into the 1800s, people who had unusual gifts, if you read novels, they were called sensitives. The word was sensitive.
Right.
Now, today, people don't know that word. But I knew a great anthropologist, Dr. Margaret Mead. She's gone now. She was a legendary person in the area of anthropology. And she used to bring students to see me, 200 of them to show. She says, I want to show you what the potential of the mind is. And she wanted me to call myself a sensitive. But the people today, because it implies a gift or something above, what is commonly experienced. But people wouldn't know what it meant. I'd have to explain it, and it would look too weird. So that's why I use the term mentalist.
Okay, that makes sense. And is there? I know you say when you see things.
Oh, I got to tell you.
Oh,
so,
Tony, please.
I got to tell you. I told you the story about the prediction, how it turned.
Oh,
now
yeah,
I want to share with you something that those close to me are aware of, and I vowed that I would make it public a day or two after Christmas, and two of the network, this country's network science shows. One of them is already preparing to do a documentary on the study of what happened, because they say, Kreskin, this is an inspiration. We know why you kept quiet about it, but now the way things are changing, can we follow up to their meeting with some of the doctors, what have you? Just a few days after my success with the election, I was having trouble with my right eye, and I had trouble off and on, and seen a doctor, and I went to this doctor only a second time, and he did some treatment with my eye, and within a day after that treatment, I started to get more of a blurred vision, and I couldn't get to the doctor. She was going on maternity leave, and I couldn't find her replacement, so I went to an optometrist here near where I live, not a doctor, but they sell eyeglasses, and he put us prescriptions. I said, I'm having trouble with my eye. He looked at me. He almost screamed. He said, let me get on the phone. You got to get to a surgeon as soon as possible. Well, within 2 days, I did. I was already totally blind in my right eye, and I was blind for a number of weeks, and the question was, would I ever see again? It turns out the doctor that I had seen just before all this happened had inadvertently severed and almost detached the retina of my eye.
Wow.
And had I waited, had I not gotten to see this optometrist and waited until a month or two when I would see, it would have never, there would have been no chance. So for 1 week, I canceled all bookings. We didn't make things public. I didn't want exaggerations, but then I decided, hey, if Sammy Davis, whom I knew could do it, I'm going to have to face the fact. And since he had one eye, I was performing for 2.5 weeks before concert audiences, theater audiences, private, and nobody. And I knew I could manage to do it, and I intended to work as hard as ever. Only one show. It was in a Coliseum, and the stage was limited in size. It was maybe about 6 feet or a little bit more than that in width, and I almost fell off the right side of it. My road manager, who he was standing off in the wings, almost raced forward, but I didn't fall. I had no vision in the right side of whatever I saw, my whole right side of my life. But I felt, the audience, I'm sure, felt, they didn't know that I was blind in the eye. I'm sure they thought the drinking has gotten to Kreskin now. At least we know that he's a heavy drinker. But guess what? Guess what, guys? And it was a celebratory Christmas Eve and day. 6 days before the Christmas day, the doctors found I was starting to see some images. So slowly, most of my visions that have come back, it will take time. And I want to tell you, this was truly the greatest Christmas blessing I ever had in my life.
I'm sure. I mean, nobody wants to lose any senses, especially your sight.
Right.
Well, Kreskin.
So guys, I could talk to you. By the way, I could talk to you for hours. I kid you, folks.
I know. We could do it.
And you would never know that I kid you, folks. But especially Tony. And I got to tell everybody listening in, when I see him, I'm only going to make quiet notes because, God, goodness sakes, I reveal what I'm getting out of his.
Well, we don't want to keep you. We don't want to keep you, but we want to. I know you want to make some predictions for 2017, and people this time of year. I mean, they are so fascinated with people and predictions.
Well, let me do just a few. Then you understand. I've got to go. And then by the way, if you have the office number here, keep in touch.
Oh, of course.
We'll do something to be continued after the first of the year when I'm kind of settled in place and
yes, of course.
And so, but a couple of things I'm going to tell you about, and this one I got to tell you, and Tony, you have been involved in I gather broadcasting and which forms of those kind of forms of movies, and you're familiar,
right?
And all of you are, of course, with the movie industry. The calls I've been getting, and I want to be there when this is brought about. They say, Kreskin, if this happens, you have given a solution. I was just with a very, very prominent musical accompaniment screenplay writer who does music for major motion pictures. He's interviewed me for some other reason and sat with me for an hour and said, Kreskin, he kept nodding his head, what you're predicting has got to come true. We are seeing right now, and this I think is the one I'm going to leave everybody to reflect about, we're seeing a great change in movie making, and that's not the bottom line. If you go to a movie early today and see the previews, you'll see a half an hour of previews. When the previews are all over, it's sometimes difficult to figure out what you saw previews to do because they sometimes blur together and they become very, very noisy. Now, I'm not knocking because there's some great movies around. But as I know very personally, some tremendous, including a special movie reviewer here on the North Star Ledger in New Jersey, whom if I were in the university, I would hire him to teach his, and I would tell students to read all of his writings of reviews. Tremendous insight. And we talk about this, the movies and what have, because what's happening is that, first of all, my prediction is, if we're going to save movies, now there's about 30% of them that get good reviews, 25 to 30% of these. Then others get fair reviews. So many today become repeats or of others or sequels to others, and on it's going, and it's getting. And of course, this will be successful in Japan because they've got thousands of theaters in the country, but it's not happening here. Movie owners are saying, no, we're losing our public. I predict. And if it happens, and the people want to talk to me more about it privately, I will. I predict that we will see the day where something that's going to save movie making will take place. And by the way, writers of movies, and this was confirmed by the gentleman that interviewed me last night. He said, Kreskin, you're telling the truth exactly. Writers of movies are leaving the movie industry in Hollywood, going into television, working in television. Mm-hmm. First of all, it's got to happen that we're going to see the day the double features come back. Oh. And the reason is this, because the money we're paying to see a movie today, a single motion picture, the motion picture has to run 2 hours. Some of the best books ever written are not 200 or 300 pages long. They're 150 pages long. Alfred Hitchcock's greatest movies were an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 31 movies. Humphrey Bogart movies, where some of them were less than an hour and a half, because some stories lend themselves to a shorter, tighter presentation, unlike The Wizard of Oz or the Great, or Gone with the Wind, or what have, which could go 3 hours. But by having movies stretch, they're beginning to drain. And the real spark of movie making is being stifled. We know we need to go back, but we can go to see a comedy movie that often, hey, listen, one of the best Sherlock Holmes movies with Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce, The Woman in Green, is little over 1 hour and 10 minutes, but it fits the story perfectly. And with a double feature, it made for a wonderful evening. I think that prediction is going to help movie making.
I totally agree, because there's a lot of movies that do go way long. Right. You're like, oh my
God. They shouldn't be. And you know, the spark, and look at the joy of being able to laugh at one point, and then the next segment be frightened or have a tearjerker or what have you. And I'm not, listen, some movies that are 2 hours in length are wonderfully in length, but it is crippling the writing techniques. And I will tell you I can't mention, writers have told me this, so let's hope that something happens. And you know, we're going to keep in touch.
I hope so.
And you know, that I predict. Okay. Even with Tony there, folks, the rest of you, no, I will do it. And you know, Tony and folks, and it's and I mean this sincerely, because I mean this in the spirit of broadcasting and in the spirit of show business. But we'll go back to, is it Captain that's with you? And
Captain Ron and Rachel.
Yeah.
And Rachel, yeah. Captain Rachel and Tony. I'm not going to say goodbye to you folks. Let's just say, in the spirit of broadcasting, to be continued. Happy New Year, folks.
You got it.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Well, the amazing Kreskin.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate you. And but all right, so he's gone. He's gone. But Rachel, we got to go to you because we need some more predictions. But first, since you're an astrologer and Kreskin's birthday is coming up,
yes,
can we kind of maybe do some dwelling into Kreskin's life?
We could.
Ooh,
This would be
okay,
fun.
okay.
This would be
All
fun.
right.
So I did some Google research. I didn't mentalize this. I searched this. And his birthday is January 12th, 1935. This is public knowledge, so I'm not like giving anything away.
Right.
And I found the time, I found the place, everything. And what's really cool about this year for him is that his birthday falls on a full moon.
Ooh, and what does that mean?
Yeah. So that means that, and actually his sun sign. This is for all of our astrologer geeks out there. His sun is like right in the middle of kind of a cluster of a T square that's really potent with Uranus and Jupiter, and there's a lot.
Not Uranus, but Uranus.
Yeah,
Oh, careful.
Yeah. Well, when I started my practice, I used to say, oh, you have a Uranus-Venus transit coming up, and people would be like,
yeah.
So I decided to change my pronunciation. It's just easier.
I like the other better. That's okay. Okay, continue.
But what's significant about this for him is this is kind of a just when he's 81, going to be 82. And this chart indicates to me that things are gearing up for him. Like this is,
it sounds that way talking to him. I mean, he's just not slowed down a notch.
Yeah. Well, but I think there's a lot of. I think that there's probably. I would predict that there's going to be more work coming up for him, and maybe he would sign up or commit to things that like a TV series or a book, or like that maybe that things would be offered to him or dropped onto his lap that are going to be really, really good for him in terms of his career. I mean, Uranus is getting ready to move into his 9th house, which is publishing and directing. I could see him sort of either behind the camera or in front of it quite a bit, not just in interviews, but
sounds
maybe.
like he's comfortable with both. So
Yeah. So it's it's kind of an action-packed year for him. Every time you have a birthday, when the sun moves right back to the same place it was at the time of your birth, that's what we call a solar return, and it marks it's like your new year in some ways.
Right.
And there's a lot of information that you can get from a solar return chart that tells you about the year. And it's going to be a big one for him, a very big one.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, listen, he is a icon when it comes to. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that listen to this broadcast and are listening to us on our podcast that may not know him, but do your research. I mean, go back. I mean, 6 decades.
They got things on here from it seems like so old. I mean, just amazing. Like even the sets, it just looks like.
Because people really today didn't get to see what he really does. So go and look at YouTube at some of the stuff that he has done over the years. He will blow your mind.
Here, this will blow your mind. Ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Did you see when I freaked out when he was talking, when he said I'm going to give you a new prediction? Swear to God, Mildred and I are driving down Sunset Boulevard, pulling into the studio, and what were we talking about? Movie trailers and how they're nonsense and how the movie thing is that's what the conversation was.
No wonder you're acting.
Till I was like, what? How, he must be like reading our mind. I mean, I swear to God, was that not what we were talking about?
Wow, that's
It
amazing.
was nutty.
Maybe do you have predictions?
I do not.
Well, I think I'm going to ask Rachel. You're a psychic medium and astrologer. I mean, you always just usually say astrologer, but you're a very talented psychic medium.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen you work. No, I've seen you work. But when you hear somebody say mentalist, because I never really knew what a mentalist was. I mean, I saw what he did, and it was like almost magician-like.
Yeah.
Instead of
very
psychic.
magician-y. He does a lot. He even does card tricks and stuff. I mean, he is a magician.
And you can tell when he's starting the interview that in some ways he's like he's getting information.
Yeah.
Like when he is asking you about your questions, it's like, I know what you're doing.
He's reading.
Yeah. But do you do that as a psychic too, or no? Because you have to do you just predict off the cuff of what you see, or do you also kind of do interview style where you're getting some information?
No, I do better if I don't have information, actually.
Really?
Yeah. because
kind of like Johnny Carson saying, "Don't want to lose."
Exactly. And also, it's fun to catch an insight or to catch a vision,
right?
And to be able to deliver it to somebody and them saying, "Oh my God, my grandmother,"
Right. I wish I could have went back and actually asked him about his childhood, because it sounds like he is like a genius. I mean, to read 4 books in a night and.
Sleep 4 hours. He's one of these guys that just his motor's running all the time.
Yeah. Well, I was watching a previous interview with him, and apparently he said he's been doing this since he was 9 years old.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah, 9.
Yeah.
9.
Yeah.
I did not see that.
And it sounds like he had a lot of support from his family and from teachers,
especially back then.
Yeah, exactly. So
that could have been kind of. Like, he's weird type of...
No, he had this thing where, like, he had his brother, like, hide a penny upstairs in the room. Did you read that? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
And he went and he found it, like, right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, like, that's what it started, like, he was, like, in tune.
My research,
but I never knew if he was, like, he's kind of like the Amazing Randy and Penn and Teller almost, where he is sort of like a skeptic. Like, he reveals that these guys are frauds sometimes. Like, back in the day, he was like, this is nonsense. There are not ghosts. Like, he's it's so weird because he's sort of against all that. And he's like, I don't want to be called paranormal. And I don't want to. There's plenty of interviews where he says stuff like that. And yet that's
what he does.
It's
really kind of odd. Like, I was waiting for him to go, well, the whole thing's a trick. Like, he's kind of
but that's
like
what
that
I'm
guy.
saying. You can't. I mean, I believe. I said I had a couple on my show years ago, kind of a mentalist type of a thing. And they said, okay, Tony, think of a number between 1 and 100. And this is a week before my interview with him. And this is through email. And I said, okay.
Through email?
Through email. And he
so
said,
not even like reading you,
no,
just through email.
Just through
okay.
email. And he said, remember that number. And I said, okay. I almost forgot the number because, I'm ADD, bird, squirrel,
right,
all this stuff. So the next week when they walk into the studio, he reminded me, he goes, hey, Tony, you remember the number that I told you to remember? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I do remember it. And he said, okay. And he reaches in his pocket. He holds his hand up, and I open my hand, and he drops 27 cents in my hand.
No
27
way.
was the number I picked.
Wow.
So that's what he does, but it has to have somewhat of a psychic ability.
When he had that guy in Vegas, that guy was from World War I. You could have probably said G574. Yep. The guy's got to be 90.
Yeah, you're like, it was 2.
Right.
That was my number.
Right.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. It feels like he's got that a little bit of psychic energy.
He does, but he also, he's got tons of interviews where he doesn't say, his other claim to fame is that he says he's done 6,800 shows or whatever. Every one of these shows that he does, he doesn't get paid unless he can find his check for doing that. Do you know about this?
No.
That's his shtick.
He finds
is that
his check.
I'll play the Carnegie Hall or whatever, and literally Carnegie Hall, and he will, like, in the middle of the show, go, okay, the woman in the 4th row, come on up here. You have my check under your seat. And then she has it. Or it's on the side of the stage, or it's in the balcony. And he claims that only 9 times has he not gotten paid out of 6,800 shows or something. That's his thing, is that he will find where it is. And he can read the people, and he eventually figures out where his check is. Isn't that something? I wanted to bring that up, but obviously he was just rolling away there. But that's like that's sort of his thing, his shtick or whatever.
Well, we just have a few minutes left, but in those few minutes, Rachel, since the last show that you were on, did very well on YouTube, and thank you guys for listening to it.
Thank you, everyone.
And we love comments. Leave them.
Yes.
But do you have any other predictions that maybe have come up in the last few weeks and it doesn't have to be political. It could be whatever you want, anything that a lot of hope. A lot of people had a really bad 2016. A lot of deaths. I mean, since then, George Michael died, Debbie Reynolds, Carrie Fisher, tons of other people have died since then. Yeah. Before we predictions, because right now we're in Mercury retrograde, under Mercury retrograde, or is it just this year that we've had so many deaths?
Well, it's.
I mean, that's been crazy.
Yeah, it's not just the. I mean, it's not just the Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde. Anytime a planet goes retrograde, there's an opportunity to do some inventory, like personal inventory.
Right.
And Mercury retrograde, especially. I mean, that's the one that we feel really the most. So with regard to the deaths, I think I'm sort of looking at that in terms of like the numerology of the year,
Right. Oh, okay.
which was last year was a 9 year. So if you add up 2 plus 1 plus 6, they all equal 9.
Mm-hmm.
And 9 is about endings, cycles, endings. So numerology runs in 9-year cycles. I'm not a numerologist. I don't do that. But I do believe that played into it. And we're also, we were finishing up the kind of the series over the last couple of years of the Pluto-Uranus square,
Right.
which is, if you're not evolving and you're not growing,
It's time to move on.
Yeah. And unfortunately, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, were taken down because not because they weren't evolving or because they did something wrong, but just because it's almost like all right, it's time for your next mission or your time for your next placement, or it's time to move on. The other thing that was really prominent was we had a lot of mutable squares, which is fluctuation, so change. So what you think is stable and what you think is solid, including, your loved ones or, the celebrities that we love and admire. It's like the universe was sort of shifting. Things felt like they were shifting. And a lot of that had to do with reminding us that we are spiritual, reminding us that this is a material existence and it's important and what we do here is important, but ultimately we're so much more than our bodies, our jobs, our houses, our cars, our, our presidents. And so I feel like this was like 2016 was a whole lot of like, if you're not on path, if you're not on purpose, if you're not living an authentic life and living in truth, then things are going to shift and things are going to change and adjust so that you get back to that place, that authentic place. So I think that's what a lot of 2016 was.
I definitely felt, it's felt very heavy. And so, it's felt very heavy from like day one.
I know.
For me personally, last February, that's when I started having my surgeries and all these, and I've had 4, almost feels like every 3 months. Finally, I think it's over. The ending. So I definitely feel like, I'm hopeful for 2017. As an astrologer, do you feel like, because I heard one psychic say, oh, it's going to be worse. But as an astrologer, do you think 2017 for at least majority or a few of us are going to have a better
two of us?
Two of us at least.
For 3 of us, 4 of us here in the room. I think 2016 was really a low. And I really want to say that I have just said my heart goes out to anybody who had losses this year or who struggled, because I know a lot of people in my personal life did. And I when in moving into 2017, I think that it's a totally different it's a totally different energy, and it's more of like I think it's going to be in terms of as many losses or as much shift. I don't think it's going to be worse than 2016, but I think that one of the big themes that's going to play out this year is dedicated people using their voices, speaking up, whether it's to your mom or to your ex or or your friends, or it's a lot of like pushing you to the limits of your comfort zone so that you stretch and grow.
I can feel that. And
for a lot of people, it's a time to sort of set intentions, say what it is that you want, and really be in an authoritative voice to really assert yourself. And break free from anything that's stressful or that's holding you back, because we've seen in 2016 that that living in limitation like that just creates disease and struggle. And so it's time to sort of break free from those sort of anything that's repressive or suppressive, and to really sort of take charge of your life, of your destiny.
Well, I'm ready.
You're here.
I'm ready. If you want to get a hold of Rachel Lang, you can go to blissandup.com.
Yes.
Email her. get a reading, get a astrology chart done.
Great numerology, man.
I know. Numerology stuck in my head. But definitely, we want to thank you for being here with us with an amazing Kreskin. You can go to his website, and I'll just show that so I don't get it wrong. AmazingKreskin.com, and that's Kreskin. SKIN.com. And, like I said, people like him, he's just an icon. And
he is an icon. He is
worldwide
an icon.
He
It
really
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
And we need to cherish people like this because they're not around anymore. We're losing like Debbie Reynolds. We're losing legends.
I love that these guys are all, they're so old and they're touring and
Yes.
they're still doing it.
Yeah,
Don Rickles we talked about.
90.
This
Yeah.
guy, this is amazing.
Yeah, he's got to watch his health though this year with the full moon on his birthday. He's got to be really careful.
Well, he sounds like he already had with the eye thing.
The eyes.
So that's crazy. But we want to thank you guys for tuning in right here on Universal Broadcasting Network, Truth Be Told. You can check us out on iHeartRadio, iTunes, and watch us on YouTube. Please subscribe, leave a comment. We love to hear from you. And we're going to have a lot more great shows, great guests, and great co-host in 2017. So
Hear.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time right here on Truth Be Told. Hey, thank you for listening to Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie right here on Universal Broadcasting Network. Make sure you go to our iTunes page. Just type in Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. Listen to us on iHeartRadio. Again, Truth Be Told with Tony and Eddie. And go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So please support our sponsors and make sure you listen to us every Friday right here on Universal Broadcasting Network from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Until then, have a good week.